Eish, the things human beings will do for money. Namibians have been calling out a Canadian company, ReconAfrica's modus operandi, as the company stands accused of conducting its business in a less than savory manner. Activist Rob Parker has made it his mission to ensure that the world knows what this company has been doing and to get justice for the environment, the villagers who live there, and for all patriotic Namibians.
When I went up there, I wanted to go and interview people who were affected by this, people who live in the villages, and that's what I did. And when I spoke to people, I was informed that the consultations never actually happened in the villages as they were supposed to, prior to drilling beginning. You know, people at Bombi just found out that there was exploration happening when people showed up to clear the land, and they went out and said, you know, hey, what are you doing? No, this is our land. We're from ReconAfrica, right? So those consultations are supposed to happen, you know, by law. The company's supposed to go in and say, you know, we have this project. It's going to affect you in these kind of different ways, and that still has not happened to this day, where the company has gone into the village and done the presentations and done the consultations. What actually happened is after people started complaining, they had a meeting at Amta, where they're based out of at Rundu, not in the villages. People had to go to them, and even at that consultation, which wasn't the consultation which was supposed to happen by law, it was all presentation from Recon side, right? The company downloading information at people rather than communicating with them, leaving no time for questions and answers. You know, kind of similar to the thing that they tried to pull in Windhoek also, but they got too much pushback in Windhoek when that happened. So at the end of the day, you know, people were never made aware. The scope and consequences of this project have never been explained to those people, or probably anywhere in Namibia. You see, everything is being done piecemeal, right? We're getting an EIA for seismic. We're getting an EIA for exploratory, right? Nobody's explaining the scope and how big this project is. And I feel like that's being done deliberately because the company doesn't want people to know what the consequences are going to be, you know, for your home if they're fracking up there, right, which they have every intention of doing. They've let their investors know time and time again that's their intention. Their reports all say that they're fracking, right? So they're being very careful not to let people have a look at this whole project. And I don't know if government's a victim of this, or if they're actually part and parcel of this obfuscation. Because if you look at the comments, for example, of the Minister of Environment, you know, when people ask about fracking, he says, well, that hasn't been applied for, right? That license hasn't been applied for. They're not currently fracking. Therefore, you know, we can't talk about this at all, right? But why would that be the minister's job to you know, limit how people are looking at the project, right? When you go to do a project, you should explain what the consequences of the project are, and those consequences are being hidden from Namibians, and it seems like the ministries feel like their job is not to put this company's project under a microscope and examine what the consequences are. The ministries seem to feel like their job is to shepherd this company through the project and through the process, so that they don't have to face criticism from communities, and that they don't have to answer questions from journalists or environmentalists, right? What they're really doing is they're playing defense for this company, right? And this is not normally how this kind of business is done, right? The small junior oil and gas company with no real history, except for leaving Mexico when Mexico passed laws against fracking, with no real history, with board members who have this kind of history of corruption. This small company has bought up the rights to an entire basin, right? A project similar to this in North America would have, you know, dozens, if not hundreds of different companies working on it. So, this company seems to have gotten a deal done in Windhoek, behind closed doors, right? With no consultation for the original EIA as was supposed to be done, right? Without the required permits, and they've simply gone into the villages, started clearing land and begun their drilling, right? Without ever consulting the communities, without ever informing them of the nature of the project or the scope of the project. If you go to those places now and you ask people in the villages about fracking, they don't know what you're talking about, right? Because nobody's ever explained it to them, right? And the company is, to my mind, deliberately obfuscating the fracking portion of the project and definitely not explaining that to people in communities. So nobody's ever really seeing the whole scope, and the government seems to be doing their best to keep this company from any kind of criticism, any kind of public spotlight. You can see the Ministry of Mines is buying paid airtime on NBC, and the things that they're saying on NBC simply aren't true, right? I have a lot of respect. There's a lot of good journalists at NBC, but unfortunately they don't call the shots. And the Ministry of Mines is simply, paying for airtime and saying outrageous things. I
haven't seen it, so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, this company is afraid of any process that it cannot completely control, right? They don't want to be on panels, whether it's with NMH or on NBC, with any environmentalists, certainly not with me. Quite early on in this, I was at Eagle FM and gave an interview. They offered, Eagle FM said, the company wants to debate you on Friday. I said, that's great. I would like that very much, and I don't think they actually want that, but let's see. And then, of course, the company made an excuse why they couldn't come, right? And they've been making excuses ever since. So, they've got these Twitter accounts and other channels that are just one way, right? And they blast out their propaganda or their story or their narrative. But the reality is they do know better. They do know they were supposed to consult with communities, and now they're deliberately misrepresenting the facts. They actually had a meeting scheduled with people at Mbambi, right? But they didn't show up, right? So they knew they were supposed to. They knew this was part of the process, and somehow they at the end they said they had other commitments, and to this day those meetings still haven't happened. So we're not talking about somebody who's making mistakes as an error in judgment, right, or ignorance of local laws. They're deliberately skirting local laws. They're deliberately manipulating the process so that they can get drilling with as little input from Namibians as possible. Right? They have created for themselves a process where they have members of traditional authority who are shepherding the process whereby the company gets land, and that person also works directly for the company. Right? These are corrupt processes. Right? There's no other way to say it. Right? If you work for the traditional authority and you work for the company, that's not a clean process. That's not a process that would fly where this company's from. This company's from Canada.
Rob Parker, who's turned environmental activist after following some of the activities that ReconAfrica has engaged in, pointed out that the Canadian-based company recently removed information on the contact numbers and location of their Canadian offices, and now list only their offices in London and in Windhoek.
The company likes to put out, tweets that says, foreign environmentalists shouldn't tell Africa what to do with their resources, and woke oil companies, you can take that with a grain of salt. But when you actually look at the process, if that's what they cared about, right, is African countries having a grasp on the resources and making the most of the resources, why is the company not based in Windhoek? Right? They've got no oil wells in Canada. They've got no exploration in Canada. They've got no business in Canada. right? As a matter of fact, when activists went there to protest at their Vancouver offices, they found that the company wasn't even in their office. And when you phone the line, no ReconAfrica. And now, magically, like all the mentions of fracking, their Vancouver office has disappeared from their website, right? Anything they don't like just goes into the memory hole, right? London, same thing. ReconAfrica isn't actually in their London offices when you go there. And when you call the phone, you get the law office of J Park instead of ReconAfrica. So if you aren't based in London and you aren't based in Vancouver, why aren't you based in Windhoek? If Africans controlling resources is what you care about, and you've got no other place anywhere else in the world, then somebody needs to explain to me why this company isn't based in Windhoek, so that Namibians can actually hold this company responsible if something goes wrong, so that the company can't just skate away with all the money at the end of the day, right? So, you know, for me, you can, if you dig a little bit into this company, you can see that their statements and their public values never actually match up with their actions. What their actions say is, you know, we're here to get a good deal out of Namibia as possible. We don't care if there's a disaster here because we've never paid a bond, right? We don't intend on sticking around because we registered our company in Canada and London, even though we aren't even there. We register it there so that we don't ever have to be accountable to Namibians. So, you know, this is the way the company acts, and it tells a lot that if this is how they treat Namibia in the honeymoon phase, right? Wait until after we're married, right? And it's not going to be pretty.
Rob Parker visited the areas in which ReconAfrica, a company that is drilling for oil in the Okavango Delta, is operating, and spoke to a few people.
So when I went to Bombi and looked at the new site, which was cleared and fenced, but has no equipment on it at that point, you could see the pits, and they hadn't lined their pits at the first site, right? Because ReconAfrica says that they're using a water-based mud, that they don't have to line their pit. But that's not entirely true. That's not the whole story, because the things you dig up from the earth, the saline and the radioactive waste, all almost go in the pit, right? So the fact that you're using a water-based mud doesn't change the reality that some of the things that you're bringing up from the earth aren't good for the groundwater, right? So when I went to the second pit, it was very strange, because if you looked around the outside of the pit, there was a layer of plastic kind of at the top and at the edges, kind of weighed down with rocks. But if you look into the pit, it's not lined. So they just lined the edges around the outside at the top. I don't know why you would do that unless it was to make the pit appear to be lined once it's full. I don't know any other explanation. I'm just a country boy. I don't know why you would do that, right? But when we went there to take a little bit of video and to take some pictures, you know, we get chased from the site and told we'll go to jail if we continue to take pictures. So, you know, that is kind of the attitude of the company, right? They don't want questions, they don't want scrutiny, and I feel because they're acting in bad faith. You know, we'll have to see what happens with the lining of the second pit. But if they are lining the second pit, then they must explain why they didn't line the first pit, right? So there are a lot of things that you know don't add up. And then if you look at the structure itself, you know, at Kawe, it's got the drill there, and it's got the Namibian flag, and above that is the Canadian flag. You know, now I'm Canadian, but that's not the way it's supposed to be, right? If you're in Namibia, your flag is, you know, I think that's a small typo on their part, but it's also a very telling typo. You know, that's the way they've conducted themselves the whole time, which is our needs first and Namibia's a distant second.
Environmental activist Rob Parker is concerned that the Namibian government is either in bed with the Canadian oil company ReconAfrica Or the company could be alluding to its name and conning Africa, and Namibia in particular.
There have been various activists and people in the area who have been warned to not chase this so hard, right? And to not push back to this degree. Activists have been warned that you may be putting yourself in danger if you continue to speak out about the project. This company, ReconAfrica, has a lot of money at stake, and if you try and screw with that, then there may be consequences for you, right? So I was told this by one of the activists there, and I, put him in touch with some organizations, hopefully that can try and arrange some protection for people, right? As I've said, this company has a lot at stake here, right? There's nothing else they have going on, right? They don't have any exploration happening anywhere else in the world except Namibia, Botswana, right? So it's do or die for them. They don't really have another choice. They don't have anything else happening anywhere in the world. So all of their eggs are in this basket, and frankly, if they succeed, they could be very, very, very rich people. So I have no doubt that company will do everything that they can to protect their investment. They've already threatened local media. They're suing National Geographic. And they've threatened the Namibian as well. I'm sure you'll get a letter very soon. My concern is simply that this is a company that doesn't follow processes and is essentially lying to Namibians, right? So let's talk about their media just a little bit, right? I'm not saying that this is some kind of pump and dump or that this is some kind of scam. I don't think we can afford to think like that because the consequences are too high. However, it does have all of the trademarks of a pump and dump. It looks like a pump and dump, right? The company is buying ads. You don't see oil companies buy ads and pay for ads, right? And if you look at the reporting, I'm just going to talk about the reporting on a website called oilprice.com, which claims to be, the world's #1 investment website with relation to oil. The articles on that website about ReconAfrica, there's over 12, there's probably 14 or so, all about this one company. And if you read the disclaimers after the articles, you can see that the oil prices is invested with ReconAfrica. They say that their articles are for entertainment only, but that's not really what happens, because once oil price prints that article, it starts showing up on Bloomberg, it starts showing up on Energy Voice and kind of all of these other websites that carry it, sometimes with the disclaimer missing. And then it ends up looking like it's actual news. But when I look deeper at that website and I start clicking on the names of the reporters, I find that those reporters don't seem to exist, right? There's no such person as Cliff Shrew, right? There's no such person as Anthony Mole or any of these people. They've written, so this website wants us to believe that it has authors that come on to their page, write one article only, never appear anywhere else on the internet, sorry. They have no LinkedIn, they have no Facebook, no Twitter. Anybody in media knows if you're a freelancer, you have to put yourself out there, you have to advertise. You don't write one story and then retire. Right? You've got to write a story every couple of weeks if you want to make the rent. That's just life as a freelancer, right? So they've written one article for oilprice.com, highly specific about ReconAfrica, using all of ReconAfrica's talking points, using all of the same language as the other articles on the site. So there's 6 or 8 authors who appear to be oil analysts made up out of whole cloth for the purpose of promoting this company, ReconAfrica. The site editor, James Stafford, also has written 2 articles under his name about ReconAfrica. And, these are really just pumping the stock, buy now, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. This small junior company scooped up the entire Kavango Basin, only has a 10% royalty. The size of the exploration place is the size of Switzerland, right? And these phrases and language appear over and over in these articles, right? Scooped up appears at least 6 or 7 times, written by 6 or 7 different authors we're meant to believe, right? And the reference to the size of Switzerland happens 6 or 7 different times from 6 or 7 different authors, right? What's the matter? Nothing else is the size of Switzerland? What about Idaho? You know what I mean? You're American. Why, you don't have any states that are the size of Switzerland? So I find it very hard to believe that these articles were actually written by different people, right? They're written by one person, right? Over and over and over to pump Recon stock. And if you start looking at the date, things start to fall into place. January 5th, January 7th, January 11th, somewhere close to that. I'm just going by memory. But, 6 or 7 articles in the span of 2 weeks. Clearly, they're just trying to pump the stock. These are not independent articles in any sense. And the other thing that's happening is they're talking about fracking, right, in January, which isn't that long ago, right? So they're talking about the Sproul report, which said that the play was unconventional. They're talking about the Haywood report, right, which was talking about unconventional, i.e. fracking. Right, so this company, Recon, in what seems to be a partnership with oilprice.com, right, or certainly some kind of relationship. Clearly, the Recon are paying the company, because I did see a disclaimer on Bloomberg that said that Oil Price got paid $75,000 for one of these articles. So I find it hard to believe that ReconAfrica isn't aware of the things that oilprice.com is writing. And the things oilprice.com is writing is referencing those reports and referencing unconventionals and simply letting investors know that they're not going to leave those revenue streams on the table, right? Why would you leave billions of barrels of gas on the table, right? And not drill for that oil or frack to get that resource? They're letting their investors know that they're going to make every penny out of this that they can before they leave Namibia. That's really what they're doing, while at the same time, while simultaneously telling Namibians no fracking, right? So they're using 2 voices simultaneously, one to investors, one to Namibians, right? And no fracking. And then again, what happens is either our government in Namibia hasn't done its due diligence and doesn't know that this company intends to frack here. That's one possibility, right? The other possibility is that they do know, and they're actively trying to assist the company to get to that goal. Those are really the only 2 possibilities. You're either being duped, or you're helping to dupe us, right? When Botswana heard about fracking, they just said, hey, there'll be no fracking here, right? To their credit. When Namibia heard about fracking, we said, well, they haven't really applied for the license. What are you talking about that for, right? And that's a really bad sign for Namibia, right? It says that our environment ministry isn't so much concerned about the environment, but rather protecting this company from criticism from environmentalists, right? And that's really going to be a problem moving forward.